Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where and when you're watching this broadcast. I'm Thomas Fessler, my friends, and this is Disclosure Tonight. Happy Monday, December 22nd. When you look at that, we got 2 days left until Christmas Eve, 3 days left till Christmas. Were you all good this year? Did you get cold, or did you get some special presents from Santa Claus in the mail? We know who we're talking about out there on that note. Let's go ahead and welcome in our audience. Who the heck do we have in our chat right now? We got a great presentation tonight from Gene Sticco, one of our regulars in the back today, but my God, his article that he wrote on Medium is on frickin' target, and we'll be talking with him, and also another one of our friends over from X about that board that wanted to eliminate Elizondo and Grush. So let's get to it. Who do we have in the chat? Let me take a look and see. All right, in the chat we've got Amiga Rules. April's here along with Banana Booey, Brains. Carl Garrison's here along with Craig Smith. We got Dunk X is around along with Eliza Teal, Eric Roth and the Gurus. Evan B is here along with Firefly, Geraldine DeRazio, Grateful. Benny is around, so call him Grateful Bunny, but Hawaii 5-0 is around along with who else? Jan, good to see you as always. J-Cat Meow, Jericho, Joey Spades, Kathy, and Kelly Broat with those piercing blue eyes. Good to see you, Kelly. Who else do we have out there? We've got Laura Campbell. Good to see you. She is in the back and she is in the chat. Wonderful person. Megan Betts is here along with Meninopolis, Mississippian, Necessary Dialogue, Niles Guy, our resident Pitbull. Don't step out of line, friends, because he bites. Real Mr. X is here along with Roni Deal, Rodney Cox. Rough Reddy is here along with Sam, Scooby Dooby Gooby, Shelly Montgomery, and the Stargazers. We got Stephen Mateo, the Chromosome Cowboy, Turtlehead 420, not 666 apparently. We've got Wee Beastie, Wendy Joe, Yankee 5858, and our friends, Two Midgets on a Horse, wherever they're on vacation on that note. Mike, how the heck are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, and I think we're going to have an action-packed episode for the audience tonight. It's going to be good before the holidays.
I hope so.
We'll have a lot to talk about, yeah.
Remember, folks, as we go through this, if we do mention the word national security, that is your cue to go ahead and take another shot, right, Mike? Welcome to the Disclosure Tonight Bar and Grill, where we cook well, huge portions, and lots of alcohol to go with it, my friends.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Before we get too far into this really quick, I want to go ahead and just, where does this go? Wish everybody a Merry Christmas. We've got that a couple days away. This is just a card from my dear brother Ron in the Midwest. Love you, Ron. And this is actually a picture he took, minus the Santa Claus hat, but we got a bunch of starlings or red-winged blackbirds flying around in the Midwest in a snowstorm, wishing everybody a Merry Christmas. And whatever you celebrate, we're here. But, you know, Mike, I think we can say Merry Christmas again.
We can, yeah. It's now it's official. We can wish everybody happy holidays and definitely Merry Christmas.
Oh, yeah. Happy New Year, everything that goes along with. Hey, we got Kwanzaa coming up on Friday.
That's true.
Yeah.
And we'll have the show after Christmas, so we'll be able to talk about that.
We may show up on Christmas. You never know. We have a habit of doing that.
That's true. Yeah.
Spreading some Christmas cheer unofficially to our audience. Yeah, we'll be around eventually. Let's see, we got family stuff in the morning. So, yeah, it's going to be an evening show, probably a regular time, my friend.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
That'll be when everybody's ready.
Let's jump into the interview guest. Let me go ahead and get this up. Yes. If you want to call it, let me see if I can get this up here. A little bit good size. This morning, Mike, when we were going ahead and almost our conversations we have on phone, that could be its own show, tell you the truth. The behind the scenes of making Disclosure Tonight on a daily basis. Yeah, there's the before the show, during the show, and of course, if you're ever in the back, folks, what you're missing if you're not there, there's the after show as well.
Exactly. They can jump in and hear how things go on behind the scenes.
Yeah. Well, a number of months ago, Mike, you ran into someone on X who had unbelievable claims out there with regards to, well, before I get to that, El Pupo, go ahead. Your hand's up.
Oh, that's my fault. I didn't mean to do that. I'm still new to this. Sorry, guys.
No problem. All right, Mike, back in time, probably about 4, 5, 6 months ago, whatever, you ran into someone on X who had a book coming out called Engineering Affinity. I
did.
Yeah, by the name of Gene Sticco.
Our good friend Gene, yes.
Why don't you tell us a little story here, just to give some insight to our audience. Who, one day he kind of popped up, but no one ever knows exactly why.
Well, Gene had the first official press conference that he did with Jim, and they were announcing the book being published.
Yeah.
And as soon as he did that, I was aware of it. So I reached out to Gene to invite him to come on the show and discuss the work that his father-in-law was doing back in the old Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And then, he joined us here on the show, and we became fast friends.
Oh, gosh,
and he's been doing amazing work since then.
Yeah, he's been interviewed by Ross Coulthard and others. He's got a lot of stuff that he's got into. Heck, he's even got another book that he put out. So without any further ado, Gene Sticco. I mean, my gosh, you're a former USAF, even a contractor for the IC.
I have been, yeah. Wore many, many hats through the years and never expected this would be one.
And you were even like global security for an oil company for a while.
Yeah, a couple of major oil companies, and primarily I worked sort of a gray zone between inside the oil and gas industry, and then contracted with government agencies as well. So CIA, Homeland Security, as they were early setting up, even the Department of Energy.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Matter of fact, they held my clearance at one point.
Find this one. I got to find this one. You bring up energy, you bring up oil, and I just remembered, oh my God, I got a video that I got. It isn't Crazy Eddie's. We'll be bringing that out shortly.
The phone with the aliens, and they really like me.
Hold on. I've got a funny video.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, where's this at? Let me get to Downey. It kind of goes along the whole oil and aliens thing and the whole bit, and Marco Rubio and support. You got to, if you want to call it, sometimes start off with something funny. Yeah. And since we brought up your involvement in oil, the light bulb went over my head. I saw this today, and it's something created with AI. And I saw it's like, oh my God, we can go ahead and use this one. This is, I guess we have President Trump announcing that he's made a deal with the aliens. So let's go ahead and where is that at? Please subscribe. Breaking UFO news. All right, let's get to this one here really quick. Let's play it and let's have fun with this, folks. Yes, this isn't real, but it's funny as ever. Just here we go.
Just got off the phone with the aliens, and they really like me. I have a great relationship with them, but I wish I didn't FaceTime with them because they're really nasty looking, and I made some unpleasant jokes, but I think they like me. We have a deal like you wouldn't believe that's about to happen. I found out they have oil like you wouldn't believe. They don't even touch it. They told me, you're crazy for using oil. I said, you're crazy for not using oil. What's wrong with these aliens? You think aliens would be smarter than us, but apparently they're not, because all they wanted for the oil, think of this, all they wanted for the oil is Marco Rubio. I guess he has some kind of special lineage. They really want Marco Rubio. They love him. And I thought, that's fantastic. Look, Marco's not going to be happy about it, but one person for trillions and trillions of barrels of oil, you have to do it. So Marco's not going to be too happy about it, but he's probably already on his way. I made the phone call.
All right, guys. Gene, I'm sorry. I had to jump into that one.
That's all right. That's how it works.
That's how it works when it comes down to oil and UFOs and everything. We get into it. Yeah. All right. So
our policy here on the show is we're serious about not being serious, Gene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So speaking of energy, did you hear that Trump announced that all of the oil tankers that have been seized, we're keeping the oil? What are your thoughts on that?
It's
international sanctions against Venezuela that we're enforcing,
exactly.
Right, Gene?
Exactly. It's oil is such a fascinating business because again, there's so much overlap and there's so much just like misunderstanding too of the intricacies of ownership of the product as it's transferred through various stages. And it's all about the manifesting, because you really can't tell, looking at the oil or even testing the oil sometimes, where it's coming from. It's a shell game that is played with a lot of paperwork and transfers and things like that. So, it's by no means a cut and dry case for them to say, well, it was Iranian oil, it's sanctioned. They'd certainly have to have a track if they're trying to say that it was, going to go there. But, it could have been mixed in with it all gets mixed in together at some points. The only difference, when you're buying your gasoline, right, and you have your branded stations, your Exxons, Shells, and then you have your BJ's and Costco gas stations and your 7-Elevens. The only difference between all those gasolines are the branded stations use a branded detergent.
Yep. Everything
else is a generic detergent.
Right. But if you go in Costco's case, Costco actually gets fuel without the detergent, and they add in their own detergent when they actually add it to their tanks.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, most of that's done like at distribution terminals. So a truck will pull in to load up, and then it loads it with the gasoline, and then they add the detergent for whoever the customer is that it's going to. Yeah, but Costco has their own system under there.
Save money, do it yourself.
Yeah, I mean it's it's a fascinating business. The politics of it make it even more fascinating. Add on top of that the international intrigue, war, and everything else that goes into it. That I had retired from back in 2017 before all this dropped in my lap. It was a good life. I got a lot of stories.
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely. Hey, Mike. So if we can, let's go ahead and actually we have a couple people in the back who have had their hands up before we get into it. Jay, and then Daryl, and then we'll get into your story.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was going to say that they didn't just say they were going to seize the oil, though. They said they were going to seize the ships as well.
It's like someone who gets arrested by the police, They find them, they're committing a crime. We're going to take your vehicle, tow it, and impound you. And if you want to get it out, you're going to have to pay for the impounding and the storage fees. It's the way kind of law enforcement works in the U.S.
I was just clarifying that it was they're taking the oil and the ship, like they're taking the whole caboodle, because like they said, you commit a crime, you get the whole caboodle, you get the car and all the contents in it.
Yeah, so the ghost fleet that's been coming to Venezuela has been exposed. In other words,
yeah, and hopefully they'll learn their lesson eventually, but I highly doubt it.
Yeah, buy one get one free. Daryl, your hand is up, my friend. Go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, Trump only telegraphed this answer to the reporter's question 9 years ago, repeatedly. Every freaking day he was campaigning, saying the problem that we had with Iraq was we didn't keep the oil.
Yeah.
So,
but then again, the laws we have for what we're doing down in Venezuela were created, written, and promoted by Chuck Schumer. So, that's when the Democrats were in the center. Now they've moved kind of way to the left, in the center that set this up. Actually, the Democrats who set this up in the past, used to be kind of on the left, are now, way out there.
My only point was to say that he's been making these comments, we should have kept the oil. So for 9 years. So this is absolutely no surprise that we're keeping the oil.
And you know what? We are set up, thanks to our friends up in Canada. We have the production facilities who can go ahead and take that thick, tarry oil like we get up in the tar sands or from Venezuela and refine it. It's a win-win situation. All right, let's get to talking about what's up at hand right now, my friends. All right, Gene, you with us?
I'm here.
All right, let's get into this. So the story you're talking about is the legacy program's Dark Trust, where Congress has been asking the wrong people about UFOs. Here's who they should be asking, and the legal framework that may be hiding UFOs from everyone, including the president. Gene, this comes at the point where we've got Eric Burleson, who's one of the leads coming out of the UFO disclosure movement in the House of Representatives, saying you're not going to hear anything about disclosure unless it comes from the president, some individual who's going to get killed because they brought out the truth, honestly, or some foreign government. So this is right in line with what's going on out there.
Yeah, and I called it the Dark Trust because I'm a big fan of trusts in general.
Yeah.
And this really seemed to be the way when I as I put thought into the legacy program, it was as it was described, primarily in the age of disclosure. Yeah. And in subsequent interviews, and then trying to break down, okay, well, where do things actually sit then if they are not sitting, within the political circle? There had to be some sort of trust for that, it seems.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's the same thing we've been talking about here on Disclosure tonight for the longest time. It's not the DOD that has it locked up. It's the executive branch along with the DOE, which has the strictest security programs, which we'll be getting into shortly. So let's get into this coming from your piece. So you said in 1946, Congress did something unprecedented. Haunted by the destructive powers of the nuclear bomb, legislators created a classification system designed to survive any president, resist any political pressure, and maintain security across generations. They called it restricted data, folks. They housed it in the Atomic Energy Commission, and they wrote it into federal statute, not executive orders, so that not one single person, not even the commander-in-chief, could unilaterally expose its secrets. Now, 80 years later, here we are today, that system is still up and running, and there's growing evidence that it may be protecting something Congress has never anticipated, the most closely guarded aerospace secrets in American history. Now, this story is of why 3 years of congressional UFO hearings have produced no answers. Why whistleblowers describe a bureaucratic morass that nobody can penetrate, and why even a president who wanted full disclosure might not have the legal authority to provide it. My God, Gene, this is a perfect representation of where we're at today.
Exactly. I mean, as you break it all down and you look, I'm always I'm hesitant when people, jump to conclusions and say about, government doing illegal things. The government's always a lot smarter than that to just do anything outright illegal. It's usually going to be, legal, but not what we thought it would be. And the more I dove into this and broke it down, the more I started, recognize, I said, this is exactly, fits the bill. They slipped in a way in an area that I couldn't find had been explored before. And that's why, I wanted to sort of rush and get it out. To start getting these kinds of conversations going.
And that's what it's about. It's about spurring, if you want to call it, the imagination of our viewers. No different that the government says we can't talk about this UAP kind of stuff because this could inspire our enemies. But what you're trying to do here, Gene, with this is trying to inspire the people who are, the people of the United States of America who are paying for this, who are getting lied to on a regular basis.
Well, exactly. I mean, and I think, this is the kind of case where we get, it's a case of unintended consequences, like you said, right? So from that first line, 1946, they are thinking about the A-bomb, the hydrogen bomb. They are thinking this is something we really need to protect. We need to even make sure that the executive cannot go rogue on us. And they came up with this structure and system. A year later, 1947, Roswell, and if we, follow the logic, and start piecing things together after, from that point on, then we start having, I guess, what you could almost call it mission creep. Well, it wasn't built for this, but it fits, so let's stick it in here. Let's cover it and classify it. And, as you go through the article and later we'll learn about trans classification and how all that intersects with DOD and the rest of the story.
Oh, absolutely. Let's get into the first part one, the hearings that go nowhere. Everybody, we've seen the hearings, what's gone on, what's come out of it. Not a lot. So since 2003, Congress has held, actually before 2003, wasn't it in 2001 we had the original UAPTF hearing? I think so. Multiple hearings on UAP phenomena. Witnesses have testified under oath about secret programs, recovered materials, and decades of cover-ups. The Pentagon has responded, of course, with investigations that find nothing. There's nothing here to see. It's all prosaic, everybody. In July 2023, remember, we had former intelligence officer David Grush told Congress about a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval control and reverse engineering program. He described jurisdictional confusion and compartmentalization so extreme that oversight may become impossible. And I think what you're talking about here with jurisdictional confusion, Gene, could be potentially that anything that comes up as a matter of national security, the judiciary steps back and says, oh, that's out of our area. Do what you want to do.
Right. They're not going to get involved in it. And I think, again, this description of the dark trust fits nicely with what David Grush was talking about, that you begin to get into this quagmire of overlaps and classification techniques where you can be looking at one, let's just say, vehicle, whether it's a missile vehicle or a UAP vehicle, but they can be looking at one vehicle and every component of it can be classified under a different system. So then you inherently prevent those systems from exposing and potentially even talking to one another or realizing, and never mind going down the. So
kind of what you're saying is we could have we could have a proverbial roll of toilet paper that was on a UAP, but because it was on a UAP on a system that used a nuclear energy or some kind of radioactive decay, that roll of toilet paper and all the knowledge about it would be completely classified because in the scope of what it was found in.
I mean, basically. And then, the DOD can put out, 400 contracts trying to, break down the 2-ply.
And how do we make it stronger and how do we make it cheaper?
How do we make it stronger and yet softer?
Exactly, yeah, without creating that horrible freaking sandpaper consistency after too many wipes.
Radiation burn.
Exactly. All right. And if you remember the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the one we inherited out of the UAPTF, investigated in March 2024, we had Director Sean Kirkpatrick, we all love him, folks, delivered his findings, quote, no evidence that any programs regarding the possession or reverse engineering of extraterrestrial materials have existed in the past or exist currently. The major word we're looking for here is extraterrestrials. They always try to classify it specifically as extraterrestrials. This term was gone back and asked recently from Christopher Sharp to Susan Goff regarding, could this mean NHI or anything else? Are you willing to go ahead and reclassify this? And their answer was no. They want to keep that extraterrestrials because their small definition of what extraterrestrials is, Gene, could be the cover-up itself.
Well, it's right. They're crafting the language to bypass perjuring themselves.
Right.
Is what it comes down to. And, if you don't ask the specific question in the correct way, they are under no obligation to correct or clarify your question. And I think this is where we're getting to with Congress and these hearings. And where Burleson and the rest need to really think about who they're looking to question and what they're specifically, asking, and making sure that those are very tight questions.
Tight classifications put into a specific channel of where it needs to go. And if it goes outside of it, they can get away with it because they've got their clear classification structure that they're going for.
Exactly. And as any lawyer will tell you, right? Never ask a question you don't already know the answer to.
Yeah.
And I think this has been a crux of the problem for a long time, that they are asking questions they don't know the answers to. And this is part of the work I'm trying to push forward, is to say, here are some answers. Let's ask questions based on this.
Yeah. Absolutely, my friend. And that's a good way to go. Here's additional information. Here's a different insight from an outside spectrum. How does this relate to what we have here? And could this be used as the ground for the platform of what they're going for? Yeah, man, Gene, what you and your wife are pushing for is, patriotic to try and bring out the truth of what Russia was working on and potentially how that ties into the reverse engineering programs that have been going on in the United States for almost 80 years.
Well, I think if we're sincere, if the government is sincere about disclosure and the UAP issue, then I think it would be easy enough to segregate the national security aspects, the things that are unique to weaponization, and filter those out and still provide it. You cannot tell me at this point China and Russia and India and Pakistan do not already understand the same physics of weaponization of the atom and the plethora of ways that it can be delivered in a system.
I mean, even the country of Oman, the sultans of Oman are well aware of what's going in the skies in that part of the world, what's happening and everything. And they're looking at this as stuff we need to figure out as technology, but also as a knowledge base we need to start bringing out to our people now and plan for it. Because if we don't, we're going to risk our culture. We're going to risk our religion. We're going to risk everything that defines us, who the Sultanate of Oman really is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's I not being involved in this, as long as probably everybody out there, it's the turning point is palatable in all of this. Yeah. And it feels inevitable. And it just seems like there is a lot of loss or lack of imagination for how to move it forward.
No, the reason I bring up Oman is because I was included in correspondence on this from the Sultanate of Oman back in 2020, 2021, around that period of time. But yes, we had that UFO that was shot down, was it in Yemen recently? Right. Which was that missile coming in. Bouncing off the UAP, and he had multiple orbs and stuff coming out of it. That's in the country directly to the west of there, right, directly to south. So why am I bringing up Oman? Because it's there. They're interested in bringing out the truth, but more importantly, shit's happened there in the country, in the country right next door that's been on the international spotlight for some period of time, Gene. And also coming from the oil industry, who's heavily invested in that area.
Oh, yeah. I've spent quite a bit of time in Oman.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Anyone find Harold? Has anyone heard from Harold lately? Hollywood Harold, haven't heard from him in a while. Hopefully all is well. Let's go ahead and move on to part two, systems. Two systems in one government. Most people assume the classified information works the same way across the federal government. It doesn't. System one is the executive order classification. The mass majority of U.S. secrets and CIA operations and NSA intercepts and Pentagon weapon programs are classified under Executive Order 13526. This system has clear rules. Let me go ahead and do a screenshot and bring that up on top of where we're at. Let's get to it. What are we talking about? The president has the ultimate authority. This is why they're saying if anyone can bring out the truth, potentially it could be the president. Special access programs require congressional notification. Not all, though, but some do. The information automatically declassifies after 25 years. With exceptions. The exceptions are, if it's still a risk to national security, you shall not bring it out. Oversight fails to the Armed Services and Intelligence Committees, Mike. I mean, not Mike, Gene. It's like we've got the ways to bring the truth out, but it's booby-trapped. Like you're trying to walk through a forest in Cambodia, and you're hitting freaking landmines from the CIA.
Yeah, I saw an interview with Mike Pompeo, and he was talking about the JFK files.
He's lost a lot of weight.
Again, he raised an interesting point. He said, even 60 years later, there might be somebody that was interviewed in their 20s and they're still alive, and their name and address or information exists in these documents. And just because the event happened 60 years ago doesn't mean that more current information hadn't been developed. So, when it comes to that 25-year window, right, it's certainly a rolling number depending on what the event is and how much information they collect and continue to collect afterwards.
Yeah, it seems to be that way as I bring up the White House currently, as we have it go on the screen and go through it. It's an interesting situation, to say the least, Gene. So now when Congress holds hearings on UAPs, they're asking about programs in the system. When RO investigates, they're searching databases built on this system. When whistleblowers file complaints, they're using procedures designed for this system. It's almost like we need to find a way. How are we going to get past this system, Gene?
Right, but I think, even more so than the system was just, again, knowing what we were asking for and knowing where to look for it. And I think this is, fundamentally part of the issue is that we don't have, or we didn't have, I like to say now we do have with my father-in-law's work, but we didn't have really anything to go on other than say, show me UFO stuff.
Right.
Show me your UFO files. Well, of course, there's not going to be a file with the big UFO written across it in red. It's going to be called something else. It's going to be broken down, compartmentalized, rebranded, renamed, whatever it might be.
Using project names and program names, not necessarily what they're actually looking for to try and bring out the truth, like President Carter tried to do back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, it is a language game, and if you don't know what the lexicon that they're using within a program, now that might be information whistleblowers could bring forward, or should have been bringing forward, or had brought forward that led to identifying some of the projects and some of the programs and things like that. But again, you don't hear a whole lot about that. We just start seeing it in things like Grush, where we were no longer talking about aliens and bodies. We now talk in terms of biologics and such.
Yeah, exactly. Which it comes down to, you were talking about earlier, the people who are looking to find things that can go ahead and increase their age. Biologics from a non-human intelligence. We've been finding things from the deep sea, from other things deep in the Congo, but now we're actually looking to try and find how can these biologics from a non-human intelligence potentially extend the human lifespan. And that's what the billionaires and trillionaires are looking for.
Yeah, well, they can have it. As far as I'm concerned.
Exactly. So getting to System 2, the Atomic Energy Act classification, the Atomic Energy Act, and recapping, of 1954 created restricted data classification, a category that operates completely outside the normal framework. Let's go ahead and bring this one up here. The Atomic Energy Act of 1954. All right. So under 42 USC's 1262, classification authority belongs to the DOE, not the president. Congressional notification requirements do not apply the same way. There is no automatic declassification ever. Oversight falls to the DOE committees, not armed services or intelligence. Information is born classified as R&D if it meets statutory definition, regardless of who discovers it, where it's found, or who possesses it. This almost sounds like the stuff Whistling Mike is in receipt of, to a degree. So here's what it means in practice. The feature is where is it? Let me get this here. Let me just do a screenshot of this, make it easier to see. Get to this one here, bring it around, bring it over here. Let's get to it. All right. So the feature we're talking about is ultimate authority. The president is withheld by DOE by statute. But if you correct me if I'm wrong, Gene, the president can declassify whatever he wants out of the DOE if he also has this signature of the head of the DOE and of the head of the CIA, correct?
I'm not aware of that. So that very,
that is the law as far as we understand. I believe so.
Yeah, if it is, I'd have to dive deeper into that.
Oh, yeah.
Because again, I was focused on, again, this DOE is the classification.
Yes.
Or, declassification authority, and begin to ask the question. So, well, DOE isn't a person. Does that mean energy secretary? Does it mean, and, was reading through the act and the law, trying to decipher.
Right, gotcha, my friend.
With one person, or is it just more of a legislative action?
Well, whatever they have in the DOE, if someone does a FOIA request or wants to bring out information, as far as Mike and I are aware, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, that you need to have the sign off of the head of the DOE, which is appointed by the president. You need to have the head of the CIA, which is appointed by the president, and the president himself. So granted, you get people in these positions that's politically appointed, but sometimes people who are appointed don't necessarily going wrong, eh, Mike?
No, that's true, Thomas.
Take it for 30 seconds. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no, I got it. The president, though, if he wanted to declassify these informations to the American people, it wouldn't matter about the head of the Department of Energy or the CIA, because you have to remember, they serve at the pleasure of the president. They are all members of his cabinet, and he's the one that leads the cabinet as a whole. So if he told them, I want this information released and declassified, what are they going to tell him? No, they can't, or they'll be out of a job. And they know that. So,
well, and that's why I think the mechanism, and we haven't quite gotten to it yet, but I think the risk in that is the career bureaucrats within DOE,
right,
who then sue to get an injunction based upon the Atomic Energy Act, and then you let it fight out in court for however many years. Till it makes it, unless they expedite it to the Supreme Court, with the Supreme Court hear it right away. So I think that's their safety switch, or their safety valve, if they have one, is if the president and his appointees say, let's declassify it. I think still within that system, there's a lawyer standing by waiting to file an emergency injunction.
Yeah.
It could be, but don't you think that if the director of the Department of Energy issues that certain information should then at that point be declassified, that there's someone lower on the totem pole is really going to be able to effectively challenge the head of the department and the president?
Well, I mean, if we believe what we've heard of the legacy program and everything that would do, then I'd say, yeah, they're probably, would somebody, make that stand publicly? No, it'd probably all be done through lawyers and, whether it's internal or external counsel, representing the DOA. There's got to be some kind of lawyer's web in there that's, ready to stand up and challenge it.
Oh, it's beyond lawyers.
Yeah. You know why? Because if it's a matter of national security, the judicial system really doesn't apply. Yeah.
Yeah. National security, Mike, is a key that seems to be the magic word for everyone to take a shot, but more importantly, for everyone to shut their mouths to talk about this stuff, because they can lock anything away and take anything away from anybody, no matter where it came from, including Whistling Mike stuff, under the guise of national security.
And that's what becomes, I think, if this were to reach that kind of legal challenge, I mean, that would really be an unprecedented case, not only, but it would really, I think, maybe redefine presidential authority, or, redefine this classification authority even, because you'd run into that exact situation where the DOE, the lawyers, whoever it is that comes forward and says, oh no, he can't, these three can't do that. They're appointees, and this is legislated, and this is the law, and national security to the Supreme Court. Will the Supreme Court then succumb when you have the president, the head of the DOE, and the head of the CIA saying, no, we're good with this? where does the judiciary sit in that one?
Yeah. But even if you look at it, Gene, currently we have the head of the CIA is the former head of the ODNI, John Ratcliffe. And after the last time the administration was in the last days, he came out on Fox News, talked about, we saw these things from satellites, we saw these videos, we saw these pictures, we know it's real, and he gave us the most, if you want to call it information, we've ever heard from anyone coming from the executive branch, but yet he's been in office almost a year so far, and we haven't heard shit from him.
And that's why I say I don't, it's not a question of the if and are they there. We got the photos, we got the videos, we've got to have government officials who obviously know about all of these programs. Do they listen, if I figured it out, if we assume I'm right and I figured it out, then it has to be a known factor.
Yeah.
So then what game are we playing here with Congress? Does Congress legitimately not know? And again, if they're not asking the right question, don't lead them down that path. These are the things that, make me wonder not only about them, but the people who are handling them, who are advising them, who are, reporting and investigating on their behalfs, as to how authentic is this effort, or is it really just a slow drip roll and we're going to get what we get when we get it? It doesn't matter how much proof we put in the way. It doesn't matter how many questions we ask.
But I think it comes down to, Gene, if we get it, because there's been people who have come out from the UAP caucus, most importantly, Representative Gallego, I believe from Wisconsin, who recently approached Tim Burchett, who basically said it's time to stop going after the apple cart. There's nothing that, there's too much problems talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I have no doubt it is problematic, but it
absolutely
needs to be done.
You got to wonder if people are saying in the audience, Tim loves donkeys. Got to wonder sometimes if his donkeys disappearing from his barns was the donkeys doing it or someone else to send a message. If we can, Laura Campbell, our remote viewing targeter, your hand is up, my friend.
Yeah, it's Gallagher from Wisconsin, and I was really excited when he was asking his questions about the Wilson document in front of the hearings, and then all of a sudden the next day he kind of did a little retraction statement locally, and it was disappointing. So you wonder how many people talk in their ear and get to them. But in regards to them not knowing information, I believe it was Nancy Mace recently that was talking about watching the Age of Disclosure movie, and then furthermore saying, gee, I learned things from that. I wish I had known some of the things before we had our hearings. It's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Obviously,
if she would have known about stuff, she would have bought stock in different companies before the hearings came out.
It's horrible. I'm sure
I know
by now that they know more, but it is really, they need to get their heads in some books and do some research, or have their staffers do it.
Yeah.
And just, but that's just my comment to it.
Or get their hat out of their ass for that matter.
Yeah.
Let's get back to this conversation. So ultimate authority resides in the president, but is the DOE by a statute. There's automatic declassification coming in 25 years, but from the DOE coming from Atomic Energy Act, never. Congressional oversight over the Armed Services Intelligence, but Atomic Energy Act system from energy committees. The presidential declassification is absolute, but the Atomic Energy Act is legally contested. It just shows you how screwed up our government is that we got the Atomic Energy Act in 1952, but more importantly, we had the National Security Act, take a shot everybody, in 1947 that really locked down our government and potentially what could come out. Now, our next section we're running into is part 3, the president's limit. No, for normal classified information, the president's authority is absolute, even by thought. We've heard that one before. What the president classifies, the president can declassify. Every modern president has exercised this power, but restricted data, on the other hand, is different. The Atomic Energy Act gives you declassification authority to the Department of Energy by statute. What am I talking about? Let's go ahead and bring up a screenshot of this one so we can go over it. All right, here we go. The Commission, now DOE, from time to time shall determine the data which can be published without undue risk to the common defense and security, and shall thereupon cause such data to be classified and removed from the category of restricted data. So the question is, can the president override a federal statute? Constitutional scholars disagree. Some argue the president's commander-in-chief authority supersedes any congressional limitation on national security information. Take a shot. Others argue that the president must faithfully execute the laws, including the AEA. This question has never been definitively tested in court. Gene?
Exactly. And, and we know the courts traditionally give way to national security. Take a shot. But what would it look like under other conditions?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. What we know is this. If a president ordered disclosed of the AEA classified programs, the Atomic Energy Act, that is, DOE officials could argue they have independently statutory duty to determine what, quote, can be published without undue risk, end quote. They could resist. They could resign. They could litigate. And while the lawyers argue this in court, the process takes years and the information always stays classified. Now, the Atomic Energy Act was designed to be presidential proof. Gene, in 1946, Congress decided that nuclear secrets are too dangerous to leave to any one person. They created a system which survives presidential transitions, resists executive pressure, and maintains security across generations. Mike, this is what we've been talking about forever. This organization within the executive branch that continues from administration to administration, irrespective of who's in, if you want to call it, control, Democrats or Republicans, and its oversight. Basically, we've got the IC, we've got the DOE, and we've got the military intelligence community that is actually a shadow government, Gene, above our actual elected officials.
Susan Goff, who's been in her position through numerous presidencies and both sides of the aisle.
Well, you brought her up. You get to look at her, Mike.
Oh, great. Jingle bells. But yeah, so that's a unelected bureaucrat that has been running the show and keeping the truth away from the American public.
But more importantly, Mike, she has been following the direction coming out of these leaders in the executive branch that Gene was pointing out. So she's just a soldier. She's just a cog in the wheel, right, Gene?
Well, right. So if you imagine, so if we go back to Age of Disclosure, they laid out, the legacy program and how they describe it. The CIA up top, the DOE, and the Air Force. And with the Air Force, you can interchange any of the Department of War. You can interchange Navy in there or whatever, So, if we imagine that it is the CIA who begins to filter, Air Force recovers, you have intel, and then they're picking up the phone to DOE. Hey, this is, we've recovered this, and here's materials that are on it. And then it is, as the saying earlier, it is born classified. As soon as they see it, as soon as it gives off radiation, gives off a signature, maybe we don't even have to recover it, and it gives off some sort of signature that then it makes it born classified. No one even has to look at it or touch it just by the nature of its existence. I mean, that's a very, again, powerful terminology. They talk in terms of, and then they also call it, restricted restricted data, right? And then they have formally restricted data, which is exactly the same as restricted data. It doesn't mean it's not restricted anymore because it's still born naturally.
Yeah.
But it's how they begin to cross it over to work with within like the department, any of the Department of War agencies.
Yeah. It's just a freaking mess. Honestly.
So Govt is right. So she's just sitting there in the Pentagon, and she just knows what she knows, and what she knows is that they don't have any of those. Well, what she knows is it belongs somewhere else, and if you don't specifically ask, she doesn't have to offer it up.
Yeah.
And she's very good at doing that, Gene.
Yeah.
She's been doing it over 16 years. So, yeah.
Hey, Mike,
So,
she likes
it's a
to do
quagmire.
it.
Yeah. Oh, I know. This is not hard for her. Then again, there's a lot of things that will never be hard for her. So she should be used to that by now.
Oh, yeah. Why nuclear declassification matters, my friend. Why does nuclear energy? What does nuclear energy have to do with UFOs? Well, potentially everything. If advanced aerospace technology uses nuclear propulsion, including compact fusion, exotic plasma systems, thermonuclear process, pretty much anything that has a decay of radioactive materials, we can go ahead and classify. It falls under DOE jurisdiction automatically. It's not hindered under the Atomic Energy Act classification as a trick. It legally belongs there. Consider the evidence. Let me get this here a little bit. Let's bring it up. We have the Navy's patents from 2016 to 2019 from Salvatore Pais. We brought his works up many times on this channel, friends, describing a craft using an inertial mass reduction device, a high-frequency gravitational wave generator, a plasma compression fusion device. He even has out there how to go ahead and hit, if you want to call it fusion and other stuff, at room temperature, stuff that they set or, that is impossible. The USPTO initially rejected the patents as unworkable. They were approved only after the Navy's chief technical science officer personally intervened, writing that the invention is operable. Now the Navy went ahead and spent $500,000 testing concepts between 2020 and 2023, and the patents were quietly abandoned. One of the things I have to bring up is when they were doing these tests, Gene, they only did half of the tests, meaning there was a field effect that came around when they had a rotational object hitting a certain revolutions per minute, but then there was another part of it that dealt with the wobbling effect that could go on from that object. They only took it for the first part, not the second part, and they declared it that the patents couldn't happen. However, they never fully explored Salvatore Pais's full extent of his patents.
As far as we know.
Right.
And
Good
that's
point.
Where the rest of it might fall under, in practical terms, this.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, here's the question nobody asked. If the Navy was developing compact fusion propulsion, why wasn't the DOE involved? Under the Atomic Energy Act, fusion energy or propulsion falls under the DOE authority. The Navy cannot independently classify nuclear propulsion technology. Only the DOE can. Now, remember, Salvatore Pais was there for a short time within the Navy before he went to the Air Force and different parts of the government. So, he's jumped around trying to find the higher authority to bring his technology out.
Right. And he's with Space Force currently.
Yeah. Either Pais patents were purely theoretical, or there's a classified parallel program housed not at the Pentagon, but the DOE. And this goes back to certain statements that came out recently coming from, what's the guy's name again? The guy who headed up the OSAP program, James Lukatsky. he came out and basically said that when he had a craft and they breached the interior of the craft and he actually got inside that craft, he was referencing Q clearance, I believe, Gene, which is a DOE top level security platform, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. El Pupo, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, really great talk so far, guys. One second. Yes, you're correct. I believe it was a DOE Q clearance, if I remember correctly, reading the documents. I forget the formal word, but it's basically the business DIA proposal for OSAP. It was in there that the clearances would be given out by the Department of Energy. So I just want to chime in there.
Absolutely on target, my friend. It's just showing that the DOE has been in this almost, it seems like, from day one. Is that what your research shows, El Pupo?
Yes, it does. And not to take away from what you were talking about, but I wrote an article as well, which basically came to the same conclusion that you did, Gene, on my own personal work. So separately, I've been doing my own investigation, and correct. It goes down to the DOE and the executive back in 1942 and then officially in 1947.
Beautiful. I mean, that's, again, that's what I think this is all about is, finding it, linking it, synthesizing, who's found what and move forward. And I mean, I see we're getting into the meat of it on my part, sort of what led me down this trail. So, Thomas.
Absolutely. So if we get into this, after the Soviet Union collapsed in 91, American intelligence agencies launched programs to recruit scientists both to acquire their knowledge and prevent it from reaching our adversaries. Soviet researchers have been working on electromagnetic and plasma-based propulsion systems. Russian patent RU 20175 7658C1 filed in 1990 describes electromagnetic propulsion devices using rotational plasma fields and superconducting elements. Now, one of the things, again, going in Salvatore Paius's patents that he brought out is he brought out the ability to have a superconductive process go on at room temperature, which for the longest time has required things to be multiple hundred degrees below the actual ambient temperature, correct?
Exactly. And, I mean, in this Russian patent that I'm referencing, Pai's patents, each of them contains a fingerprint of, the combined work, my father-in-law had done.
Yeah.
So again, I don't try to say it in the sense of, oh, well, they copied it or whatever. It was within this Soviet program that this fingerprint exists, and you find it in the patent, in the Russian patents. You find it later in the Pai's document, which I think again speaks to the information transfers that occurred after the fall.
Now, considering the different podcasts that Salvatore Paius has been on in the past and everything, it'd be wonderful if we could try and figure out how can we get you and Salvatore on this show to go ahead and discuss some of this and debate some of the things that he's talking about based on what you know from what the Soviets were dealing with. That would be a kicker.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I think, obviously he's a brilliant man to begin with. So I think to just have his feedback. I mean, he certainly, Russian speaking, he can read the originals and fully comprehend what was going on there. And just to understand the timing of it all and not to take away that he wouldn't have come up with things originally on his own, but I have to imagine that it was informed in some way by things that were coming in.
Well, you look where Salvatore was working with at the time he came up with all these patents, working for the Navy. And who has all the ships out there and potentially the most interaction with the non-human intelligence, even more than the Air Force? It's the fucking Navy. So it makes sense that he was part of the Navy. And honestly, I saw some of this stuff when he first brought it out, and it was like, okay, which non-human intelligence is he working with to get all this information lined up?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And again, I mean, I'd love to have his take on it all and love to talk about the
Mike, let's see how we can pull this out. Pull this together. It'd be great.
Yeah, well, we've been trying for a while, Thomas.
Well, let's go ahead and try again with Gene, see if we can get the two together on a conversation. I think we might be able to make it happen, especially with the context of how Gene's information that came forward from his father-in-law with regards to the Soviets, how it relates to the work Pace has been doing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll discuss it with Gene and we'll look into it.
Yeah, let's look into it, see if we can make this happen. That would be the conversation I'd love to absolutely have. Now, looking in part 5, the National Security Administration. All right, folks, another shot, my friends. The NNSA shot is a semi-autonomous agency within the DOE created by Congress in 2000. It maintains a nuclear weapons stockpile, operates weapon laboratories, and provides nuclear propulsion, but also it really oversees anything that has any type of nuclear decay within the United States of America and our territories, or what we've actually gone ahead and actually pulled together into our hands. The last function is significant. The NNSA already manages the reactors powering every nuclear submarine and aircraft carrier. This work happens in partnership with the Navy, but under the DOE classification authority. If compact nuclear propulsion for aerospace exists, whether reverse engineered or independently developed, the NNSA is where it would be classified and developed. You're hitting the frickin' nail on the head here, Gene. Calling out the NNSA is the point where if we have any kind of advanced exotic propulsion system we're trying to reverse engineer and turn into something that our military can use, because that's the key we're going for, this is the place it's going to be.
Absolutely. It's most publicly the place where naval propulsion sits, nuclear propulsion. There were efforts in the 60s and 70s that were abandoned on nuclear propulsion for aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
So it has been explored, but seemingly abandoned. There's certainly plasma engines and things like that now, which I would need to dive into a bit more. But if we're talking propulsion, this is where it would be. This is where it sits.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just breaking down the bureaucracy, all roads lead to the NNSA.
It seems to be, my friends, as we're talking about some different stuff about disclosure and different things about what's being locked away from the American people. This is a little video I found for our friends in the UK that we love so much. We're going to be covering your plight more and more as time goes on. This is just a little reality and humor, brilliantly done, but the unfortunate truth of what is going on with free speech and the attack on free speech in the United Kingdom. Let's have this a little aside. You inspired me on this one, Gene, to get to it. Let's play that. Here we go.
Why are you going home?
I got sent home for suggesting we do a nativity this year. Apparently I'm Islamophobic. Miss, where's all the Christmas lights?
Ben, that's offensive. They're winter lights.
Sod off, they're Christmas lights.
Ben, what's wrong?
Got sent to the principal for wearing a poppy. Being British is fucking offensive now.
Ben, are you excited for school?
Not really. The teacher keeps trying to teach me about India and culture, mate.
Ben, why aren't you allowed outside?
Because Labour put an illegal hotel just round the corner.
Ben, why are you in time out?
All I said was I'm proud to be British.
Ben, who's picking you up from school? Mum or Dad?
Mum, because Dad's in jail for racist tweets.
Ben, what's for lunch?
All they sell is curry now, thanks to Labour and the illegals.
Oh, I had to bring that one out. You inspired me on that one, Gene. But yeah, it's a shame what's going on in the UK, Mike, eh?
It's really awful. It's I can't believe what we're watching over here in the United States as far as what's going on in that country.
Yeah.
It's like it's getting worse every day.
It is, but we're going to cover it as something that goes on as disclosure gets quieter. What's going on in the attacks of free speech that's happening across Europe and the United Kingdom, even in Canada. could be happening quickly here in the United States if we lose a Republican, if you want to call it, leadership within the United States. And I hate to see what we could potentially turn into. And that's why we're going to be covering it. Getting back to part 5, the National Security Administration. The NNSA is a semi-autonomous agency within the DOE created by Congress in 2000. It maintains nuclear weapons stockpile, other weapons, laboratories, and provides naval nuclear propulsion. That last function is significant. The NNSA also manages the reactors powering every nuclear submarine and aircraft carrier. This work happens in partnership with the Navy, but under the DOE classification authority. If compact nuclear propulsion for aerospace exists, whether reverse engineered or independently developed, the NNSA is where it would be classified and developed. The NNSA's current leadership is, which kind of ties back to some of the stuff that we've heard from Teal lately. Let's bring these people up and share their names. Who are we talking about? Brandon Williams, who was the administrator, political appointee since September 2025. We have Scott Papino, who is the principal deputy administrator and a political appointee. And then we have James McConnell, who's the associate principal deputy administrator, who's been a career official for 20 years. What we're talking about here, El Pupo, is a bunch of people who were in power over these different areas, but they're not elected. They're unelected bureaucrats who seem to be this intelligence community / military industrial deep state. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And a couple other names that I uncovered. Let me go down to my gatekeeper section here.
Yeah.
No, I definitely agree here. And what this is, you know, we apparently we're told we live in a republic or a democracy, whatever you want to call it. I believe we live in a democracy.
Right.
We have these positions. One of them is Todd Lowry. He's basically the new, I'm not saying this is a bad individual. I'm just stating who this person is and what their job entails. Todd, I believe his middle name is M, Todd M. Lowry. He is the DDS&T. That's the deputy director of science and technology at CIA. So basically, He's the new Glenn Gaffney. And so we have these people that are in unelected positions that are there for sometimes decades. Gaffney was there for over 10 years. His predecessor was there for, I think, 14 years. I forget her name off the top of my head. But anyways, my point is, yes, there are these certain key figures in all these 3 different letter agencies that are basically running these unacknowledged programs. They hold on to the portfolio. They're not elected in there. And yeah, it's undemocratic to say the least.
Yeah. It's an unelected group of bureaucrats who are in charge of some of the most important information with regards to our constitutional republic. Eh, Mike?
Well, that's right. And let's remind the audience that Glenn Gaffney was the one from the CIA who was blocking Lockheed from transferring over the materials to Bob Bigelow at OSAP and Bigelow Aerospace.
Yes,
so
sir.
Now we have Todd Lowry, who was in that very same position, and I'm sure nothing has changed from then to now. The question would be, what is Mr. Lowry dealing with at the moment in 2025? That's what we'd all like to know.
Anything and everything.
Oh, I think so, Mike. It's something we like to know, but in typical Christmas spirit, what's going on out there? We're going to call it insane. Let's take a little clip back to the 80s and 90s, Mike. I'm sure you've seen this commercial many times of Crazy Eddie's at the commercial at the Christmas time. Here we go.
Deck your halls with the lowest sale prices ever on anything and everything in home entertainment and home appliances during Crazy Eddie's greatest Christmas super sale ever. Get a Sony AM/FM cassette Walkman, $36. A deluxe VHS video cassette recorder, $179 after rebate. A Sharp 19-inch color TV with remote, $248. A programmable compact disc player with remote, $148. See Crazy Eddie now because his Christmas super sale prices are insane.
It's been too long since we've seen Crazy Eddie around here, Mike.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that was a funny commercial.
Oh, yeah. Almost as funny as if you look at the numbers over on Polymarket. Breaking, MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell is projected to win the Minnesota governor primary election.
No.
It's insane.
No, yeah, that is insane. That ain't going to happen.
Oh my gosh, yes. Got to have fun with it, my friends. Let's go ahead and continue on back to where we were just at, talking about Part 5, which is the National Security Administration. So political appointees rotate every few years. Career officials provide continuity. James McConnell serves at the NNSA. Let's go ahead and just bring this. Here we go. Bring it up here. Let me make sure I can see what I'm doing here. All right. James McConnell has served through the NNSA through Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden. His official biography lists his positions, including the NNSA's first chief of defense of nuclear safety, the assistant deputy administrator for nuclear safety and operations, the deputy associate administrator for infrastructure and operations, the associate administrator for safety, infrastructure, and operations. All I'm hearing is a bunch of titles and promotions, Mike, that means more and more money and more information. Before the NNSA, Deputy Technical Director at the Defense Nuclear Facilities Safety Board, he was the former Navy submarine officer with degrees from the Naval Academy, the Catholic University, George Washington University, and MIT Sloan. Oh my God, Mike, there are so many titles here and so many degrees. It sounds like a total bullshit artist.
But somebody who seems to be very well connected and high up.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
He certainly hit all the key resume items.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So what you're saying, Gene, is if distributed research is conducted across DOE laboratories, materials at Oak Ridge, physics at Los Alamos, engineering at Sandia, Battelle is thread connected to all of them because Battelle is the organization that actually runs a majority of our national labs, right?
Right. They run it as a nonprofit or not for-profit institute. So you again, compartmentalization. We should take begins taking shots for that.
But really quick, did you hear the speech from Trump today? Go ahead and attack the CEOs of the military industrial complex, saying you need to stop having these huge $50 million $50 million salaries, and you need to stop going ahead and doing stock buybacks. Do the work. Deliver the stuff and get the job done. Stop paying yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it's again, he said the thing that's needed to be said out loud for a long time, right? You shouldn't be getting any bonuses as a CEO when your programs are decades behind. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, my friend. Let's get into the next phase 7, the jurisdictional shell game. Yes, there it is, my friends. Now the picture becomes clear. David Grush described a bureaucratic morass and the jurisdictional confusion that prevents oversight. Here's what that structure actually looks like. 1, technology involving nuclear propulsion is classified under the Atomic Energy Act, not as a Pentagon SAP. Research is distributed across the Department of Energy national laboratories, each seeking their own compartment. Classification authority rests with the DOE career officials who's maintaining continuity across administrations. Oversight falls to energy committees, not the armed services and intelligence committees holdings UAP hearings. It's not to deal with them at all. RO searches Pentagon IC databases that don't contain the Atomic Energy Association classified programs. So it sounds like what's going on with RO and everyone's focus is all in the DOD, but push those fuckers aside. The real program where everything is being classified and hidden, Gene, is what we've been saying for the longest times is in the, back to 2021, is the DOE. Your thoughts?
Exactly. I mean, and so, to Arrow's defense, if you want to call it that, they're not lying, right? They don't have access. They don't have knowledge to it. They have no visibility of this thing that they are going looking for. And again, barring a work of reverse engineering that, which is what I'm putting forward, right, with my father-in-law's work. If it weren't for that, I couldn't have gone down this rabbit hole because I didn't know what exactly I'd be looking for, right? So in the same way, they're, asking things based upon primarily photos and statements, and then somebody can walk them in a room and say, well, here's something that looks and, sounds and smells like the thing that you're looking for, and we've had it for 20 years, and they say, well, we're, and okay, they've checked the box. It's ours. Somebody says, yeah, we built this thing, but nobody goes back to the origins of it. And even if we can get to the origins of it, if it's not locked up in IP that belongs to a Lockheed or a Boeing or, or somewhere in the Bechtel ecosystem of companies that have privatized these materials, all people know are the little piece, the little wingding or widget that they are working on. And they don't know the full scope and scale and history of that wingding and they don't know where that wingding is going, except they know, oh, I'm doing something with, the nuclear program. It's and there's enough, again, language ambiguity, even within DOE. If you begin to talk about propulsion systems, they'll talk about space propulsion systems and vehicles. And are they talking about ICBMs? Are they talking about, passenger vehicles?
Yeah.
There's the ambiguity is built in to cover all, if there's such a desire to cover it up.
Yeah.
Hide it away in there.
It just seems like it's a shit show, my friend. James McConnell has served through the NSA, we talked about him. It's someone who's been there for a period of time. And I have to ask the question, Tio, you've heard this different things where everything is being implicated towards the DOE. While we've heard a bunch of different things where you're bringing out the names of the people who are involved in this special organization in regards to the executive branch and the DOD, does this information change your thoughts on the people who are truly, if you want to call it, responsible for the cover-up?
You mean, good question, Thomas, but you mean in reference, like basically after hearing Gene's wonderful article that we just went over, the 5-part essay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, no. I did learn some new things, but what it basically does is it's the way I see it, it's almost like we're taking the same course on different parts of the United States. And, we're given this really hard, quantum physics math assignment. And we both are right. We're both correct. We both got the correct answer, the same answer, but we don't know each other. This is the first time I've ever talked to Gene. It's just confirmation. It's I don't know how better way to put it, but it's a confirmation from someone who I just met that basically is just corroborating my own personal investigation. But to answer your question about the DOE, yes, the DOE is a major player, pretty much the major player. The way I look at it, there's definitely pretty much all 3-letter agencies are involved, to some extent. But the two main players here is through the executive branch and through the Department of Energy, in my opinion.
Flat out, 100%.
100% yes.
Yes, it is the DOE through the auspice of the executive branch, and it seems like there is just a combined authority that goes between them. But more importantly, it leaves the president of the United States outside of the decisions and directions that are being made, and it's operating like its own rogue government agency.
Yep, exactly. And another way to put it too, it's almost like a parallel government or a black
shadow government, right?
Or a shadow government, correct.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're doing their own thing. They got their own policies. They got their own crew. They got their own personnel. But they just so happen to also be people that work for the United States government. But they're just kind of co-opting it. I don't know how to explain it better outside of science fiction movies. Marvel stuff. We're basically being infiltrated by what's that Marvel thing called? The Hydras. It's almost like that. The Hydras come in and they've overtaken the CIA, and it's like, I don't know how to explain it.
Sounds like a Disney takeover to me.
And part of the worst part of it, again, if you look by definition, the NNSA is a semi-autonomous organization. all of this infrastructure, and, can go all the way back to after Roswell and the creation, of the National Security Act. This is all infrastructure that has been deliberately built to hide, dual purposes. And they've made it fit nicely. And until recently, the demand really, it's been manageable. It's been manageable. The call hasn't been here, but now the calls have been coming. The evidence has been mounting. You can't hide it as much. And I think they're just stumbling their way through.
Oh yeah.
Trying to figure it out. And I talked before about, controlled disclosure being a term of art in counterintelligence, and that it, reaches capacity, and we would move into transition by design. And we're seeing some of those elements of transition by design come out now, especially with all this attention on Brazil coming out all of a sudden. And Japan is starting to talk about it, right? I said it months ago. We would begin to see our allies.
And Japan is starting to talk about that just after they've been starting to go ahead and restart one of the nuclear reactors they've had shut down for 15 years because they need the energy.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, nuclear nexus. So.
Oh, yeah. So if we look at this, Whistling Mike in the chat says, this is an important show. We need to change the plan for 2026. We need to understand, where's that at? We need to understand...
How they got away.
How they got away with things and adapt and overcome. Great points. What do you think, Mike? I mean, Gene.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, I feel like the odd men out in the in the social media world there, because everybody's spun up chasing whatever in Brazil and Spielberg's movie and dissecting and analyzing, and I've got this nasty habit of staying on target. If the target is disclosure, if the issue is that our representatives are being blocked from the resources and the information that they need, if there is something I can do to help advance that or help raise that attention, then I want to do it, and that's what I've been trying to do. And the lack of response, if not pushback, that I get in trying to do it creates a whole other set of questions, for me and all the rest. But I think, like, El Pupo, said earlier with, his research that he's come across, and I feel, equally the same. It is great to see other people who, do deep dives into the information that's available to us. Right, even though we have to consider that it's been given to us, right? It didn't necessarily get leaked out or come through secret. It's what they kind of want you to know, and if they kind of wanted us to know it, and we've kind of chased it down, and we've landed in the same places, we're in the same ballpark. I think that's phenomenal, and I think again it just reinforces everything along that line, including, for me, my father-in-law's work, which is the crux that I lead, that leads me down all of these trails. I don't randomly select it myself. It's that the information there leads me to those things, which says to me, there's got to be something there.
Oh, there's always something there, like my migraines that come out of absolutely nowhere. I see El Pupo. I'm going to put you guys on.
Tio has his hand up.
Tio, go ahead and deal with it. I will be right back. I need to go find some meds. Go ahead, Mike, and guys, take it.
Thank you, Mike. I just had a quick question for you, Gene. Are you aware of UAP Gerb, or he also goes by Gerb sometimes? He has a big YouTube channel. Are you familiar with him?
I'm familiar with him. Several months ago, probably back late summer, I actually spoke with Jesse Michaels and then Gerb at the same time. And I sent Gerb all the information. We had a conversation. He had a couple of questions. Then he essentially ghosted. I, kept him in the loop for a little while, just sort of updating with like some of the the research I had been doing, and the correlations I had been making with the government programs. And then I just, again, I can understand being busy, and then, it just gets to you just ignoring me. So I just moved on.
Oh, gotcha. Well, that's unfortunate. My question was going to be, have you seen his latest video where he breaks down kind of the legacy, what he calls the legacy UAP program and the NRO? But basically, the reason I'm bringing it up, if you've seen it, it's really recent. It's 3 hours. It's super long, but I highly recommend everyone watch it. But in there, it's basically reiterating a lot of stuff you've said, stuff that I've said. I just find that fascinating that multiple people, I kind of said this earlier, are coming to the same conclusion on their own personal investigations, and we're all just kind of stumbling upon this ourselves. It's really interesting. But if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend you checking it out.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and it is. And again, that's what begs the question. If three schmucks figured it out, then what is happening in the government that they have not already sat there and said, this is the area we need to go down. This is what we need to focus on. These are the questions we need to ask, right? And again, no disrespect to the whistleblowers who come forward and tell their stories. We don't need more stories. We need,
I agree 100%.
This stuff. We need exploration of the science that we have available from the sources that we have. We need these compartmentalized programs, the origins broken down, and we need answers not necessarily from even the department heads at this point, but these career diplomats that sit in these legacy positions. Let's say you can even call them that. The people who are the consistency between administrations and aren't subject to the politics, but are responsible for the maintenance of these programs, and they might just be the ones who need to be asked. I don't know, Mike, what you think?
No, I agree with you completely, Gene. You're absolutely right. This has been the problem, though, that we've all been struggling against for better of 80 years so far to date.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's like the deeper you get into it, the more it's like quicksand. It's a quagmire. Every layer you try to peel out, every level you go down deeper, it just keeps going, and there's nothing solid, nothing concrete. That's another reason why a lot of the researchers and a lot of the public, and even the politicians in Congress that look into this, they get frustrated after a while.
Yeah.
People, that it's meant to wear you out and wear you down. So
absolutely, and that's why I think when I saw Thomas pop back in, I don't know if he's back.
I'm back here. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah,
I got refills.
We went on to part 8 there, where why disclosure is harder than anyone admits.
All right, let's go ahead. Let's go from part 7, parts 7 to part 8, which is actually part 7 is the jurisdictional shell game. But just jump to part 8. Why disclosure is harder than anyone admits, Gene. That's kind of where we're at right now. Let's get into it. The UAP disclosure movement has operated on an assumption. If enough pressure builds, the president or Congress will force disclosure. But what if the legal framework makes that nearly impossible? Well, taking the presidential path, a president who ordered disclosure of Atomic Energy Agency classified programs would face DOE officials citing independent statutory authority, legal challenges arguing the president cannot override the Atomic Energy Act, court jurisdictions freezing disclosure during years of litigation, mass resignations at the NNSA, the people who run the nuclear weapons complex, accusations of endangering national security. Even a fully committed president would be fighting a bureaucracy, the courts of Congress simultaneously. It sounds like something Trump is made to do, Gene, if you ask me, who says fuck you to everybody else to go ahead and bring it out. And he's going to go off script, forget what the prompters are going to say, and he's going to bring out what he wants to. But would they let him?
Would they let him? And again, the I've said it before, right? If he's going to do it, it has to be a political win. If
national security,
on, who the Democratic voices are going to be, can you imagine, their narrative would be, can you believe Trump wants to jeopardize the national security of our nuclear stockpile systems to talk about UFOs?
But if he can fuck with everybody as much as he can in the United States and the global power elite, this would be the guy to do it, who says, fuck everybody. We're going to go ahead and bring this out. You deal with it because I'm only here on the short term. That's the only power play that I personally see. What do you think, Gene?
No, I absolutely agree. Again, I think
he's a freaking loose cannon if there ever was one.
Yeah, but I still think he'd be, he wouldn't want to disrupt the party, let's say.
He already has. He's already basically saying the Republican Party is dead after him. So, so who? Fuck the party. It's me. I'm Trump.
Yeah, very true.
All right.
But you can certainly see where that, would have prevented it through the years. That but when you get someone in there who's a wild card, you never know where it's going to go. But on the congressional path, Congress could amend the Atomic Energy Act, but this requires majorities in both chambers, and either presidential signatures could veto the override. But even most recently, we've heard, Mike, that members of the House of Representatives have said disclosure is not going to come from the House. It's not going to come from the Senate. The only place in American government that it can potentially come from is the president, right, Mike?
That's true. Even Eric Davis said that publicly in an interview. We're only going to get disclosure, and we're only going to get the truth from the top down, which you've also been saying here on the show for years. And if it doesn't come from the president, it's not going to come from anywhere else. We're not going to get it.
What do you think, Brian? You had your hand up a little bit earlier on. We didn't get a chance to call on you. What say you?
Yeah, even though I harp on how to try to do this legislatively through a discharge petition, that's 100% right. And we have enacted these, I don't want to call them war game scenarios, in the back chat for a few years now. And through all the arguing and everything else that we all do, it all boils down to the executive branch.
Yeah.
So 100%, if we were to war game this out, plan out the scenario, it comes down to the President of the United States, period, in the story.
Yeah. It just seems like it's completely bought and paid for, Brian. We want to bring out the truth, but the truth of the matter is, truth of the reality is, it's classified, unfortunately. We want to bring out the truth, but there's too many things in place that stop us from getting to that point. I mean, you've gone down this with many different people. You've invested money into this to try and get to the truth. You're like a super Uber, if you want to call it, disclosurist. How do you see this?
I'm just an amateur. I appreciate that, Thomas. But yeah,
we all are.
Yeah. Even if you try and get it through the legislative branch, so you try to attach it to the NDAA, you can't bring it up as a clean bill. But even if you look at the Epstein files, even when the legislative branch declassifies things, what happens? They come out classified.
Yeah.
Still. Okay, it's not 100%. And I understand redacting victims, and we can argue all that. But still, same thing with the JFK files. They're not 100%. It's got to come from the top down. And unfortunately, the legislative branch just does not have the oomph or the will to do anything. And it seems let alone the power to do anything.
Yeah. And I think, Brian, in describing where you're coming from, we've come up with a new term, a disclosurist. We never heard that before, but it really reflects how a lot of the people on this show feel, how you feel, and a lot of our audience feels. We want to bring out the truth no matter where it takes us. Fuck if it's from Greer, fuck if it's from Elizondo, or anywhere in between. We just want to bring out the truth, right, Brian? Whether it's an alien that's been abducted and we've got videos of this stuff, or videos that we've seen of craft interacting with their stuff, we just want disclosure to come forward and not be stalwart thwarted by these career criminals in our government.
Yeah, and you know what, Thomas? I think that's a great term. Instead of us calling ourselves amateurs and being humble and everything else like that, Gene, Mike, everybody else,
we're all disclosurists.
We should be disclosurists. I like that.
We're not a disclosure advocate. We're a disclosurist. We want the truth to come out no matter where it takes us, period.
And what is a professional ufologist, by the way? You know, somebody that's on TV all the time? Fine.
Oh, you mean someone who's a professional grifter who looks to go ahead and get people to go ahead and pay their monthly payrolls and everything else? There's a bunch of people out there.
Too many. That's the problem with ufology.
Yeah.
It's why Lou wanted to burn it down.
Right. And that's why they have, if you want to call it the UFO hate group, because Lou called out and said, you know what? Ufology needs to be burned to the ground. And I have to say, Mike, I agree. People like Stephen Greer need to pay their dues. Just saying.
Yeah, well, I think eventually they will. The truth catches up in the end.
Oh, yeah.
Always does.
Oh, yeah. Can't wait to see what Darcy brings forward.
Oh, it's coming.
Oh, yeah. Part 9, the questions that matter. From James McConnell, the NNSA Associate Principal Deputy Administrator. Have you been aware of programs involving aerospace propulsion classified under the Atomic Energy Act Authority? Interesting. Let's move that on. 2, does the NNSA hold restricted data classifications for programs involving compact fusion, advanced propulsion, or technologies of unknown origin? What interagency agreements exist between the NNSA and DoD regarding classification of aerospace technology? Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Thomas. On the point previous, the compact fusion.
Yeah.
There is work being done on that, Brian. I think that's the point you're about to make.
Yes, and so what I want to bring up, and I think I've told some
but
people.
Really quick though, before you get to this, Brian, the PACE patents included a compact fusion reactor that leveraged the gravitational warp-field generator to go ahead and be used to go ahead and contain the fusion within this, if you want to call it, reaction area.
Yeah, so that would be a Salvatore Pais. I can say, and I'll be very brief here. I spent 3 days, 2 nights with a plasma physicist, and I talked to Gene about this multiple times. He's built fusion reactors. They're large, and he's worked with
like the Tomac reactor.
Yeah, so this is using deuterium and tritium.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not aneutronic fusion or helium-3, anything else like that. But he's worked in the national labs, and boy, I hope nobody knocks on my door tomorrow. But yes, at the Sandia, Lawrence Livermore, they do have compact reactors that are completely separate from the power of a plane or helicopter.
Yeah,
and that plasma reaction can wrap around a certain skin of a craft.
Oh yeah,
rendering it invisible or different colors.
All I can say is around 2:45 in the morning, watch the end of your driveway. See if you have a black SUV hanging out there, Brian. It's happened here before.
I just want to bring that up, but yes, they do have compact fusion reactors. That's one of the things that they do. And I have never worked for the government, so I have no NDAs.
Neither do I. But sometimes when you talk about stuff that's in their realm, they like to go ahead and assert their dominance. Whoa, right, Michael? Absolutely. So for the DOE Office of Classification, how many classification guides exist for aerospace or propulsion-related programs under the AEA authority? What classification authorities have restricted data authority for non-weapons programs? Have any R&D determinations been made for materials of technology described as unknown or non-terrestrial? Probably none, because, well, they like to use the word alien potentially. But if it's an interdimensional species and event, it throws all of this out of the water. For Lou Von Thayer, who's the Battelle's CEO at this point, we'd love to know, Gene would love to know, what is Battelle's current role in the UAP-related materials analysis across the laboratories you manage, which he would never answer. What historical records exist from Battelle's Project Blue Book involvement, or even before that, my friends? Do any Battelle-managed laboratories hold materials or technology acquired from government sources related to unidentified aerospace phenomena? Gene, do you think they'd ever answer these questions? I know they're out there, but it's just like they're going to sit and spin.
Listen, it's just about asking the question. It just gets something on,
So you like to get them in front of Congress, ask these questions, and let them go ahead and say, I can't answer that. I can't answer that. I can't answer that.
And that's why I say, again, when I've done these comparisons of my father-in-law's work with these programs, when you sit them down and you ask them these questions, they say, well, no. And then you say, okay, now the next round of questions are about these specific programs. And then the next round of questions about, the origins, and you've got to walk them down the path. But, it has to be a serious effort. We're not going to get it with 1-2 hour hearing every 3 years. It's got to be, it's going to be a week, a week of 8 and 12 hour days. If you're serious about breaking this down. So it's almost, a test to me, when I look at the House and the caucus, of how serious they are about this. And if they're not serious about it, then what does that mean for disclosure overall? Then is it really all just a game? Is it all really just the slow drip controlled narrative that we're going to get no matter what? I don't know.
Well, it seems to be the controlled narrative, Gene, until we can get the truth to be brought out, whether that's from the government, which seems unlikely, or from the non-human intelligence itself.
Absolutely. I mean, and in which case that's the catastrophic disclosure everybody says they don't want. So,
but it seems a catastrophic. We've been in this slow drip disclosure forever. It seems the only way we're going to get out of this is catastrophic, and which is something myself, Mike, and a lot of our audience actually vote for. Where do you sit in this, Gene?
I'd be fine with it too. I feel for the people. I know there's going to be a lot of people that couldn't handle it, and so I certainly worry about everybody. Right? You want everyone to just sort of be excited and think of the possibilities.
But it's kind of like what's going on in the United Kingdom. You can't go ahead and hold back the thoughts of the majority because there's a minority that might be offended based on what's going on. And that's what we're seeing is the majority thought process is getting shut down because it might offend a minority out there somewhere. And if that's the case, if we're taking that, because if you look at what's going on in the United Kingdom, you look at what's going on in Europe, you look at what's going on in Canada, and heading that way, once we get to a Democrat leadership in the United States, that's exactly where we're heading, and that's what's going to shut down is our freedoms and our ability to talk about this, and they're going to lock it up like it's some kind of heresy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the writing's on the wall for the directions that they want to go in.
Almost comes into point 10, part 10, which is the dark trust, where you talk about the 1946 Congress looked at the atomic bomb and decided some secrets were too dangerous for normal oversight. They created a system where a classification authority was vested in an agency governed by statute and insulated from political pressure, including the pressure from the president. They called it protecting the common defense. They built it to last forever. However, 80 years later, that system is still running. Career officials maintain continuity across administrations. Classification decisions are made under statutory authority that may supersede executive power. Oversight falls to committees that are looking for aerospace secrets, which we're just saying, Gene, is our government is compromised. Flat out. The executive branch is compromised. Right. We're being leaded on a lot of things by an unelected industrial military intelligence complex that's over our government, that's actually making the deep decisions on what we do or don't do.
Right. I mean, again, it's a lot like oil and gas. The system, the apparatus.
Let's call it like olive oil and balsamic vinegar. You can't get the two to mix. If you can, you can dip the bread in and it can taste really great with the vinegar and everything, but you'll never get the two to mix, right?
Never.
Yeah.
Never. I mean, it is just, the size and scope and scale. Again, it's, if you try to put your brain around it, you're going to have your brain's going to start hurting. And this is this represents a small piece of it. Mm-hmm. And we are really taking on a Herculean task to get there.
Yeah, it is. Beyond that, Mike, your thoughts?
No, Gene hit the nail right on the head. This is what you and I have been talking about to the public for a long time now. It's at the heart of it. And I think we're either going to get the truth from the president, if we ever hear him decide to release the truth and declassify everything.
Let's hope he does.
Of course we hope
because it takes an unstable individual to be able to break through it and say, fuck everybody else, let's bring out the truth. That's why everyone is saying, if anyone can do it, it can be Trump. Give him some time, maybe he'll do it, hopefully he will. And just fuck with everybody in the United States and the world stage, because if there's anybody who's be willing to do it, Mike, the only person we have out there right now is Trump.
Yeah, I hope you're right, but we've talked about this before. We'll see which way it
Time
goes. But my other
and
point
history will tell.
Yeah. But if we don't get it from the top down, then the only thing
then we're never going to get it. Flat out.
No, the only thing left would be catastrophic disclosure.
Catastrophic disclosure is either going to come from the president or from an individual who has physical evidence to prove what they're saying, not more fucking trust me bro bullshit, or a foreign leader who's going to put forth a bunch of evidence to show what's going on. That's where we're at. It's either going to be the president of the United States saying, fuck the bullshit, here's the truth, or it's going to be an individual who says, look at all this shit, look what they've been doing, and you can't debate it because it's so true, because the physical evidence is there, or a foreign entity, because they're bringing it out and pushing out the truth, saying, United States, fuck Russia, everybody else. Here's the truth. Here's what we've been saying. And this is where humanity is. They've all been covering up. They're all guilty, but we're going to go ahead and come clear. Right?
Yeah. Well, Tim Burchett said all the time publicly, we need an Edward Snowden for disclosure.
Yep.
If we get that, we'll get the answers that we're looking for.
Yeah.
So time will tell, like you said before.
Yeah.
We're going to have to wait and see what happens.
It's all a matter of time. And hopefully we can get there one way or the other, my friend.
Well, listen.
And we're there for no matter where it takes us, no matter what side it's on, one way or the other. As long as we know the Tier 3Bs are a bunch of bullshit that was bought out by Greer in the past and promoted by him, and it's not real. I'm for that part. For those who have been talking about it recently in back conversations, you know what I'm talking about, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. But listen, getting back to disclosure, like the work that Gene is doing and the work that his father-in-law did.
But even what Teal's bringing forward, there's a lot of people who are working on this from different angles. But you know what? We all come together at the same place. And that's the thing we all need to recognize, whether it's Gene or Teal or anybody else. This is what we're all heading for, and we all need to figure out how do we converge on this one point, right, Teal?
Yeah, he's otherwise engaged, I would assume. Go ahead, Gene.
No, absolutely. You know, I mean, I think, again, to Thomas, your and Mike's, credit, this is exactly, this is the brilliance of this forum, right? That we can present the information and have other people who have worked on similar things come in, and we can share it. And I'm sure, Tio and I will get together offline and, share and cross-reference and keep pushing things forward together, and then be able to come back and report on it. I mean, that is how progress is achieved. Not chasing everything, but being selective about the things that we can get our arms around.
Really quick, I want to bring up to this, Gene. Delta Echo, who's been a contributor on this channel for a while with regards to his comments in the chat, says the Rubio Luna ticket is the best chance for disclosure. I think honestly, if you put political parties aside, our best chance for disclosure is the President of the United States. Old Poo-Poo, your thought?
Oh yeah, thanks guys. I did hear what you said earlier. I was just predisposed with
that's
some
okay.
stuff. But yes, I agree. I wrote a post. I won't read it out loud, and go find it, but not verbatim, but basically to summarize what I said, and I still stand by this. After watching the Age of Disclosure, I watched it literally immediately the next day, a second time. I watched it a third time. After the third time, I wrote out at the time, and I said right now until Christmas. This was, I think, it was 18 days before Christmas, but I basically said right now is the greatest time ever in humanity, in my opinion, to get disclosure from any executive, any president ever in history. That's just my opinion. If you look at everything lined up, we've had how many UFO congressional hearings, Senate hearings. There's never been a moment in history. And after watching Age of Disclosure, I'm like, it's right now. The push is right now. Of course it could happen afterwards, but basically I think right now is the biggest time for it to come, and we'll see what Trump does.
Yeah. Potentially, if we can get someone like Trump who's willing to go ahead and blow out the existing paradigms and bringing it out, this is a chance we have, because anybody else is going to be honed in if you want to call it puppet for the existing organizations. Hopefully, we can get it there in the next 3 years. Let's hope. That's all we can do.
Oh yeah, and I definitely agree. And just one last thing I want to say, I definitely want to get in touch with you more, Gene. You're definitely know what you're talking about, and I really appreciate people doing their research, because we don't have any institutions doing this. Like you said earlier, we don't have. You go and start on this topic. Okay, guys, where's my key terms and my sheet that I can, what do I got to look up? There's nothing like that. You get thrown to the wolves, and it's like, good luck. You got to do it on your own. But forgot I was going to say.
And everybody's so easily distracted. I mean, it just feels, I mean, really, I think pissing in the wind.
It feels dirty, Gene, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, it's discouraging. It's the idea that you sort of jump into something. You're like, all right, this seems like it has some meat. Where are we going with it? And man, an hour later, it's gone. It's ancient history, because we're just distracted by a new video, or worse yet, an old video or an old thing that we're just recycling again, because somebody of some sort of notoriety decided to do a show on it, and it's the topic of the next 10 days. Yeah. And it's nothing new. It's just this recycling, and for a community of people who are so concerned about what's a psyop and what's not, they are the easiest bunch of
Well, if we want to know who the PSYOP is, it's Susan Goff, coming from the DOD, flat out. Hello, Susan.
It's like Chinese food, Gene. It's filling when you're eating it, but an hour later you're hungry again. It goes away.
Yeah.
That's been the problem the whole time.
Yeah. And it seems to be heading that way more and more. Mike, take this for 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, I got it. But look, you're right about what you're saying, Gene. The key people who work behind the scenes, like you do, like we do, to try to get and make sense out of all this and have it organized to get to the truth and ignore all the bullshit and everything else that's going on out there. That's the only way we're going to get to the truth. So we do that, but the public does not see all of the work that goes on behind the scenes. Only the people involved do.
No, absolutely. And I think, again, I think it's the difference between people who are seeking substantive answers and people who are just hanging around waiting for some kind of spectacle. People who are, genuinely intellectually curious and want to explore, and people who just want their own ideas reinforced, to make them feel better about themselves. It's tough to differentiate sometime until you commit some time to listening to them all and going down the road with them a little bit, and then you just wind up getting disappointed.
That's true. You can find yourself seemingly, like you said, starting off on the right path, and then at one point you realize you're on a dead end and it's the wrong path. Yeah. So but that's the work that goes on again behind the scenes. The public does not really see a majority of that. You and I both know that very well.
Yeah. And Tio had his hand up.
Oh yeah, I remember what I was going to say. So what I read this from a really interesting book. It's called Crypto's Conundrum by Chase Brandon. He's ex-CIA. He's actually read the Roswell file. But anyways, his phrase is a convergence of coincidences or convergence of synchronicities, and that's what I think this is we've all separately just converged through separate coincidences that we've either read or heard or watched, whatever medium. And I just think it's fairly fascinating. We've all come together, and we wouldn't be here if it weren't for UFOs. One last thing I do want to add to, because I think Gene, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but if people are wondering like who's currently running the show, who are the gatekeepers right now, it's SAPOC SRG. I said it. Christopher Sharp, I believe, has said it, and UAP Gerb in his latest video said it. So
who's the SAPOC SRD? Go ahead and give us an understanding of that, break it
down real quick.
Break it down, please.
Yeah, let me break it down. Let me pull it up. I'll give you the official. So let me scroll up to my article here. So basically, in 1947, Majestic 12 was put together by then President Harry Truman. This was in an unofficial top secret document. I posted before. But basically, after the 1990s, I don't know why, but anyways, during the 1990s, it was DoD Directive 5205.07. So DoD Directive 52057. It is the Office of Performance Improvement Officer. Sorry, what does it say? Basically, it established new responsibilities. What am I trying to say? It basically changed the way SAPs and CAPs and are basically these unacknowledged and acknowledged programs are managed in America. And I don't really know why it was done. Gerb has his own reasons, but basically this DoD directive comes out and it changes the way that the CAPs and SAPs are managed, and it shows in there they're run by a group called SAPOC SRG. And SAPOC stands for.
So what you're talking about is Special Access Program. What does CAP stand for?
Yeah, it's Special Access Program Oversight Committee, and SRG is the Special Review Group. Mm-hmm. Now, these people, we've heard of some of their names. Mike Kostelnick is one of them. But anyways, basically, through my investigation, that's who I've uncovered.
Makes sense. Mike?
Yeah, I'm familiar with SAPOC, and I could tell you that Lou was involved with them at one point as well. He oversaw certain special access programs when he was in the Pentagon. That was kind of his day job at the Pentagon when he was there. Very interesting. The investigation that you've been doing on this really is going down some very deep rabbit holes, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah.
And it's good work because this is where a lot of what goes on behind the scenes on the government side of things is how they're able to get away with what they've been doing for so long. That's how this works. It's the secret sauce in how they've been dealing with this. So, but we're all working together and coming up with the same points, like you just pointed out. And we're going to get to the truth one day.
You know, Mike, I can't wait if we can get Sal Pius or Pace in the conversation with Gene on the show. That's where it needs to go next, honestly.
Well, we're going to work on it, Tom.
And considering all the people he's been involved with on different shows in the past, if we can find the email address, we should be able to bring him here to go ahead and have this kind of a deep conversation that's really needed. Gene, are you up for it?
Oh, Gene's up for anything. I can tell you right now.
Absolutely. I'll talk to anyone.
The last time I reached out to Dr. Pius, I could tell you that he wasn't doing interviews at the time because he moved out of the Department of the Navy and he started working with the Air Force.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult, like pulling teeth. But that being said,
Mike, if you have to pull teeth from a newborn, you'll still find them. There won't be a lot there, but it'd be kind of bloody, but you'll still find the teeth.
We'll see what we could find out. I'm going to figure this out, and I'll talk to Gene about it off air, and we'll see what strings we can pull on to try to make that happen.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we will.
There's a reason. There's a conversation that needs to happen, and hopefully we can use that to go ahead and try and bring out the truth, because there's a lot of things that Sal Pius has been involved with. He's talked to a lot of trolls that have been out there, and I want to hear where he's going to come from our aspect of the application of this technology, because that's where it's really at.
Right. But I have a feeling that we probably would get better answers having a private conversation with Dr. Pius.
Well, of course, but we're going to have those conversations before we get on the show. But if we need to, we'll do it live, because that's what our audience deserves. They don't want to have an edited truth. They deserve the truth that comes with it, that we all fucking deserve. Whether it's coming from Trump, it's coming from us, it's coming from everywhere. We all deserve the truth.
That's right. But you're also very well aware of, like we all are, that there's certain information that is able to come out at times when it's ready or is supposed to be coming out. And we have to abide by that.
I know, but let's see where it goes. Our audience deserves it. We're here for the truth.
And that's why we do the show. We bring what we find out to the audience on every show or upcoming shows. We let them know ahead of time.
Yeah.
So this is why we do what we do. But yeah, we'll get to it. Yeah. And it's going to be an interesting year, I think, moving forward past New Year's.
2024 had UFO disclosure at a point. 2025 was a knockdown of 2024, 2023. 2026, let's be honest, it's going to be less than what it was before, because they have been pushing to put this genie back in the bottle. It's a reality. So we'll cover other stuff in addition to the UFO disclosure, because apparently, Mike, we can't handle the truth.
Well, listen, we can. You and I both know that, and so can the audience. And
we know that from that point. But the United States government feels we can't handle the truth.
Oh, I know, but it doesn't really matter what they feel. The truth will eventually come out, like it or not, one way or the other. Yeah. I happen to subscribe to the catastrophic disclosure way. So we'll see if we can get there.
Let's bring it out and let the truth flow, my friend. That's where it belongs.
You're absolutely right about that.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll see how this new year starts to shape up.
Oh, God, yeah, my friend.
On
that front, I want to go ahead and thank everybody for your wonderful super chats we had tonight. Who am I talking about? We had some super chats come in. If I click on the button, let's bring it up from Shelley Montgomery. Thank you very much, Shelley. From Truth Seekers. Let me turn off auto here on that one. From Truth Seekers, thank you very much. We got Daryl is here, another one. Laura. Thank you very much for your super chat. Rory Matrix and Brian Pemble. Thank you, everybody, so much for your love and support of what we do here on Disclosure Channel. We try to have a fun time. We should look at that. We're on Monday, December 22nd, almost at the end of the year. We're here to bring out the truth wherever we can. On that much, Mike, I want to appreciate you for coming out for tonight's show, and more importantly, Gene, for bringing out this phenomenal article over on Medium.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you picking up. I appreciate you reading, everybody who reads it. I don't publish often, but when I do, I like to make it impactful, and gives me a nice warm fuzzy that you found it impactful. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely, my friends. And as we usually say, Mike, at the end of every episode of Disclosure Tonight, eyes open, no fear, be safe, everybody. But
go back to Party City where you belong.
Absolutely. We'll catch you in the flip side. Good night, everybody. See you soon.